We are recording. STEVEN Kostanski, hello, welcome to STARBURST Magazine. How's it going?
Great, thanks for having me.
So, PSYCHO GOREMAN, it's a weird movie. Where has that come from?
Well, I mean, the genesis of this movie is that it comes from my experiences as a kid watching sci-fi horror action movies that maybe were meant for adults that traumatized me, but also enticed me with their special effects and creativity. So a good example is Terminator 2. Watching that as a kid when I was way too young to be watching it, I was impressed by the chrome robots shooting purple lasers, but horrified by seeing guys get their kneecaps shot out. And so this movie's me, I guess, kind of dealing with those traumas a little bit by making an adult movie for kids that juxtaposes the kids' adventure film with like kind of a dark horror sci-fi fantasy kind of narrative at the same time, and just showing how those two plot lines are constantly at odds with each other, and kind of mining as much humor out of that as I possibly can.
The kids in this movie are absolutely amazing. What was the casting process?
It was definitely a big concern going into this project that we wouldn't find the right kids. When I wrote it, everyone who read it was like, oh, this is a great idea, but if you don't find the right kids, like, this movie's going to fall flat on its face. And so we were very paranoid that we wouldn't find the right kids. But in our casting calls, actually one of the first rounds of casting we did, Nita Hanna did her tape, and I saw it and immediately was impressed by her professionalism on the film, or sorry, in her self-tape, which she then carried through in her performance on the film. But yeah, it was like Nita and Owen and Scout all just had so much charm and personality that really encapsulated what I wanted in the movie. Like, I wanted their characters to feel genuine, but also very absurd and have a lot of personality, which all of them did. Nita especially, like, she is very much the character of Mimi in real life, and so it was not a huge stretch for her to play the character, but also just in how professional she is in her other pursuits, like dancing and singing and theater. Like, she had so much experience already coming into this movie that even though this is her first on-screen role, like, she totally dominates the movie. And I think it really works well because the core of the movie is her relationship with PG, and I knew that I needed a kid that could stand up to this hulking, like, beast creature, this intergalactic warlord. I needed a little girl that had the energy and the confidence to, like, go toe to toe with him, and Nita definitely brought that to the film.
It's got this weird mix of being a gory horror movie, a kind of sitcom comedy, an almost married with children thing going on, and then Masters of the Universe, kind of in a twisted sort of way. Where did you start? What did you start to make, and what did you end up with?
What was the initial premise for the movie, you mean?
Yeah, like, what was your what did you see the movie as being, and what, the finished product is brilliant, but
I mean the treatment for the movie, the very first treatment I wrote, is basically a template for what's on the screen. Like, the thing I put down on the page is very much what we made, aside from a few jokes here and there that we came up with on the day, and like visual gags. But a lot of it is very much like how I envisioned it on the page. I wanted to make a very absurd movie that jumps between horror and comedy, and action and fantasy. Like, I just like mixing genres in that way, and not being restricted by any kind of expectations. So yeah, I mean, nothing really changed as we were shooting it, aside from just like figuring out how to execute the stuff that was on the page, because it was a very creature effects heavy movie, lots of practical effects, and it was a very low budget affair, so we had to figure out how to achieve the spectacle without really having the money to do it. So that was the biggest challenge of the film. I mean, if we had more money, there might have been more stuff in space, I guess, but I don't think that's really true to the spirit of the film. I did go into it with the intention of being like emulating the style of a movie like Masters of the Universe, where you can feel like it's a movie that's based on a property that is like huge in its universe, but due to budget, they have to put it on Earth in suburbia. So you've got He-Man like fighting guys like in a high school gym, and it's like that's not really what you want to see out of a He-Man movie. But I like that, and I grew up on that kind of conceit, even with a movie like Suburban Commando. I like the idea of transplanting really big, like operatic sci-fi fantasy stuff into mundane suburbia. And so when I made the like commitment to using that as like the kind of visual style of the movie, it kind of helped excuse me not being able to have maybe as many effects as I wanted in certain parts, because that is just the tone of this type of film. Is it's low budget. It has to take place in like, you know, this family's home for a good chunk of it. And just the look of having fantastical creatures in mundane locations is very much true to the spirit of the film itself.
Some of the monsters and some of the creatures in that movie just look amazing. And I'm kind of surprised when you say, oh, we had to stop because the budget they look great. For a look, it's, you know, it's a low budget movie, but you couldn't tell when you see some of the creatures there, because it's just they're just like they come like they've crawled out of the 80s into the future. Is there a particular monster or creature that was left on the cutting room floor, or did you get all the beasts? Was there one beast that you absolutely had to have? Apart from PG, obviously.
Very early in the script, like the only attempt to be budget conscious with the creatures was the Paladin's Obsidian, the like crew of aliens that PG's former minions. I had one more guy named Tyrone, but in the writing process, I was like, 6 is too many. I'm gonna have 5. But he didn't even get to the point of like what he was gonna look like. I just, in my head, I had 6, and then I decided I'd shave it to 5 to save money, I guess. But as far as other things that I cut, if anything, I like redid gags to make them better, because I just wanted things always to be bigger and better and more impressive. There's a very specific gag, like 2/3 of the way through the film, where PG gives a certain character a warrior's death. I don't want to spoil it for the audience, but we shot that gag one way during principal photography, and it was pretty underwhelming what we shot. And so I actually went back, rebuilt the whole thing, built a new improved puppet for it, and then we went and reshot it in a friend's backyard, just to get the look that I wanted. I'm remembering now, there was one sequence that we talked about on set that we ended up not doing because time, and also just the logistics of making it happen. Was we had the idea of Mimi doing like a makeover on PG, like outside of changing his wardrobe, like actually like doing makeup on his face to try and make him look good, but having him just look even more nightmarish, like being smeared with like red lipstick and maybe doing like full plastic surgery on his face to make him look human, which was a funny idea to joke about on set, but actually doing it was not logistically possible. So if there's follow-up adventures to PG, I'm sure I'll try to find a way to weasel that in somewhere.
I've just got this because the Knights of Obsidian are so visually striking, and I think when we reviewed it in the magazine, we were like, oh my goodness, we want all of these as action figures. And now that you've mentioned the 6th one and he's got such a normal name like Tyrone, I'm just picturing him as some guy.
I mean, I do think, I will say, if I remember correctly, Tyrone was like an acronym. Like it stood for something. I don't remember what, but I think that just further confuses the matter. So an acronym for what, I think, would inform what kind of creature he was. But it's entirely possible he was just some guy. I mean, there's no reason why he couldn't have been. But yeah, maybe we'll realize him in a further adventure down the road.
So there's a bit of a shout out in this movie to one of your earlier projects, in the sense that there's I don't want to spoil the movie for anyone who's not seen it, which is most people watching this at this point. But there's a police officer who doesn't have the nicest of fates, shall we say.
A police officer who doesn't want to live anymore makes an appearance. Yeah, I mean, it was something that as I was writing it, I just organically made my way to that, where I was like, it would be really stupid to throw him into this movie. So I have to do it, because fans will not stop hounding me about making a biocop. I said it. A biocop movie. So yeah, that's we now see the origins of his character in this film, and if there's subsequent versions of him in other films, I think it's entirely possible.
So are we going to get a sequel, or are we going to get a biocop movie?
I mean, it's hard to say right now. I kind of have to wait for the movie to actually come out and see how the reception is. Like, if the movie is successful in however a movie can be successful in 2021 during a raging pandemic, then for sure I would love to make more adventures. Whether it's a series or a movie, a follow-up movie. I've been telling everyone that at the very least, I need to make like 12 more movies so I can get to PG-13. So whether that's like 11 episodes of a TV show and then a 13th movie, or just 12 more movies, we'll see. But I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Maybe unrealistic, but I think it could happen.
I have to ask, what's with the Zardoz?
It's a shirt that I bought in Austin, Texas at a vintage store. And so this isn't even the best part.
Oh my goodness. I mean, every day is improved by
go.
seeing Sean Connery in a film.
R.I.P. Sean Connery, right?
Yeah.
One of the greatest actors ever.
So what is your perfect project? What would be, if you had a huge budget, if someone suddenly turned around, they see Psycho Goreman and they go, right, okay, you know, this is it. Here's a budget. What's your dream project?
I mean, I keep throwing this one around. I feel like it's an unlikely fantasy to have and kind of an absurd one to have, but I've always wanted to adapt the video game Doom into a movie. I know it's already been done twice, and in my opinion, poorly. So I'd love Universal to be like, we like Psycho Goreman. Here's $100 million. Go make Doom the way you want to make it. Because it's a movie I fantasized about like since I was a kid, since I played that game. I just could imagine what I wanted that movie to be. And so if I was able to go do that, I even tell people, like, if it was like down to like, you either get to make a Star Wars movie or Doom, I would still take Doom. Like that's how obsessed I am with somehow achieving this fantasy project of mine. So yeah, that is the movie I want to make. That's the movie I feel I'm destined to make, and I'm just waiting for that opportunity to happen.
I'm going to ask you some really dumb questions just to kind of finish off, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
So firstly, if you got to remake any other movie, but you have to cast all Muppets except for one human, what would that movie be?
Do they have to, when you say Muppets, I need context. Do you mean like Muppet characters from the Muppets, or just puppets that can look however I want them to look?
Let's go for both. Given what Psycho Goreman looks like, let's say both, because I'd be interested to know what.
I mean, if by Muppets you just mean puppets, meaning things that I could make look realistic and scary if I wanted, I'll go back to my previous answer and say I'd make a Doom movie, still cast Carl Urban as the main guy, and just have him fighting a bunch of puppets. And then if I could remake something with all Muppets, I mean, I feel like Mortal Kombat Annihilation would be a lot of fun to do with Muppets. But I would keep Brian Thompson as Shao Kahn, and everyone else would be Muppets. So just Shao Kahn would be live action, like a real guy.
I'd love to see that, actually. I really would. If you could save one piece of art, so it can be a movie, it can be a book, it can be a TV series, it can be a piece of art, and that thing will survive until the sun dies, so it will last, stand the test of time, what would that be?
I think the movie Christmas Story. It's just a good movie. Sorry, it's like not a funny or particularly like crazy answer, but like that movie's always been in my life. No, you know what it would be? It would be a VHS tape that would have Christmas Story and Ghostbusters on it. Like a bootleg VHS recorded on SP. So it's not great quality, but you got two movies on the tape. And it would have Christmas Story and Ghostbusters. I want that to survive to the end. I guess there wouldn't be a VCR to play it, but I don't care.
I could figure that out, I'm sure.
That's future humans' problem to figure out.
So some kind of further dumb quickfire questions. So Simpsons or Futurama?
Simpsons, of course. There'd be no Futurama without Simpsons.
Dragons or Death Stars?
Dragons or Death Stars, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, Death Stars.
She-Ra or He-Man?
The only reason I'm going to pick He-Man is because I'm not super familiar with She-Ra. So I don't even know if that's a fair question because I'm not making an informed decision. I'm only picking He-Man out of familiarity.
The Guyver or MacGyver?
The Guyver, of course.
And
cut MacGyver's head off with his arm blades. He doesn't stand a chance.
Again, I would watch that. I would watch that movie.
Be a short movie. He'd die pretty quick.
Like Godzilla versus Bambi.
Yeah, exactly.
And Star Trek, Star Wars, or Stargate?
You know what? If you'd asked me pre-Disney era Star Wars, probably would have said Star Wars. Now that we're in the saturation of Disney and my disappointment in the sequel trilogy, and the fact that I've only recently been watching more, well, modern, meaning like TNG and Deep Space Nine. I'm deep in Deep Space Nine right now and loving it. So I'm going to be totally crazy and say Star Trek. Though I do love the Stargate movie. I haven't seen the show, but the first movie is great. But I'm still going to go Star Trek just because I love Deep Space Nine so much. It's such a good show.
And finally, truth or beauty?
Truth or beauty? Well, I feel like there's a lot of beauty in truth, so I'm going to go with truth.
Thank you very much for your time. So, Psycho Goreman, how can we get our hands on it?
So January 22nd, it will be in theaters wherever there's theaters still open, drive-ins, video on demand, iTunes, yeah, like digital download, it'll be available. So that'll all start January 22nd, and then in March it'll be on physical media, Blu-ray, DVD, and then May it comes out on Shudder.
And what else should we be looking out for that's coming from you? What's
I did 4 episodes of the Day of the Dead TV show, which is coming out in October, I believe. And I'm also working at Masters Effects right now doing effects for Umbrella Academy Season 3 and The Boys Season 3. So keep an eye out for those things as well, whenever those come out.
Steven Kostanski, thank you very much for your time. You take care now.
Thank you very much for having me. It was good talking to you. Till next time.
Take care. Thanks.